Let's take a look at our tangent function. And remember that you can write your tangent function as sine of x over cosine of x. And we've already taken a look at both the sine function and the cosine function, so you should have examples of those. Let's go ahead and take a look at just a couple values from our tangent function, and we can go ahead and plug in these values so that we can take a look at our graph. If we're starting with a value of, let's do the pi over 6 and do 30 degrees. So we have y equals tangent of 30 degrees. Remember, this would be the same thing as doing sine of 30 degrees on top and cosine of 30 degrees on the bottom. You already have values for each of these. You can use the ones off your chart if you would like to. We have 1/2 on top for sine of 30, and for cosine of 30 we have radical 3 over 2. Right, and we could go ahead and divide these out. Remember that when you're dividing fractions, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So when we flip this bottom fraction upside down, we get 2 over radical 3. The 2's here are going to cancel, and this is going to give us 1 over radical 3. If you want to rationalize it, this would be the same thing as radical 3 on top and 3 on the bottom. If you want to take that out to a decimal, this is going to be about 0.577. Right, and we can do the same thing. We could be graphing each of these pieces. If we take a look at our graph here, if I'm plotting 30 degrees or pi over 6, and that decimal equivalent I just got roughly a little bit more than 1/2, you can kind of take a look at, this is where our point would be on our graph. Right, and we can do the same thing. We can pick other x values. If I go up here and take a look on top, right, I can pick an x value of pi over 4, which in this case would be 45 degrees. Right, I can do the same thing with pi over 3, which is 60 degrees. And I can do pi over 2, which is going to give me 90 degrees. Right? Kind of keep in mind that as you kind of work your way through each of those values, right, you're going to get a series of points that you can then go plot. When you get to the part where you're doing the pi over 2 or the 90 degrees, remember what happens here. Because if I'm using the idea that my tangent of x function is a fraction, right, this is the same thing as saying sine of 90 degrees over cosine of 90 degrees. And sine of 90 is going to give us a value of 1. If we do cosine of 90, we're going to end up with a value of 0. And just kind of keep in mind, you're not allowed to have 0 in the bottom part of your fraction, so this is why it says undefined. Okay. And it's also why you're going to see these asymptotes at these values, right? X equals pi over 2, x equals 3 pi over 2, 5 pi over 2, etc. Because that's going to happen each time. We're going to end up with 0 in the bottom part of a fraction for those values. So we have a sketch of our, just kind of one wave of our tangent graph. That's the graph that you can see here on this left-hand side. Right? If I pick more values, that tangent graph is going to repeat, right, which is the graph that you see here on the right-hand side. Just be aware that you do have those asymptotes at those specific x values where your denominator would be equal to 0.